our growth objectives and our along transit. So this was information only. It'll be coming back for a vote in March. I also serve on the King County Growth Management Planning Council, and we will not be meeting until March, so I'll have a report then.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Kent City Council Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, March 3, 2026. First up, we have call to order. Melissa, may we have roll call, please?
Council President Kaur.
Here.
Councilmember Boyce.
Here.
Councilmember Boyd.
Here.
Councilmember Larmer.
Here.
Councilmember Michaud.
Here.
Councilmember Shoker.
Here.
And Councilmember Troutner.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. All right. Agenda approval. Are there any changes to the agenda? If not, may I have a motion, please?
So move.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we have approval of minutes for February 17, 2026. May I have a motion, please?
So move, Madam President.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Councilmember Shoker. And motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Payment of bills.
So move, Madam President.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, next we have our fourth quarter 2025 investment report, and we have Joe here again. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Joe Bartlemy with the Finance Department, and today I'm presenting the fourth quarter 2025 investment report. And this was presented to our Investment Advisory Board on February 26th. All right, so at the end of the fourth quarter 2025, we had cash in the bank earning a 4% earnings credit that offsets our bank fees, a balance of just under $6 million. We had our short-term portfolio with the Washington State Local Government Investment Pool earning 3.877% yield. Overnight maturity, we can access those funds as we need them. And a balance of $117.3 million. And we had our long-term portfolio with an average yield of 3.75%, average maturity of 812 days, and a market value of $262.4 million and a book value of $260.4 million. The market value right now exceeds the book value based on the current market conditions. Our portfolio is worth more than the book value. Next, we have our 5-month flow of cash investments by type. Cash at the very bottom, we're keeping just enough cash in the bank still to cover our current cash flow needs. The pink line is our local government investment pool. We can transfer money in and out as needed. Then our long-term portfolio has stayed steady throughout the year at about $260 million. And then the total portfolio overall has stayed relatively steady throughout the year. Next, we have our 3-year flow of total cash and investments. So 2023, the blue bar at the lower portion was a significant increase year over year. 2024, the green line, that's started and ended about the same spot throughout the year. We had those large purchases at the end of the year or in the fourth quarter of that year for the ASB building and some Keehawk expenses. And then the 2025 balance really tracked very similar to the 2024. Next are interest earnings over 5 quarters. Both the long and short-term portfolio are both performing very well. Pretty steady interest earnings throughout the 5 quarters. And next we have our total cash and investment portfolio allocation by fund. So of the total cash and all the investment types, this is the portion that belongs to each of our funds throughout the city. So significant portions in the general fund, various capital and utility funds. Next, we have our long-term portfolio only. So this report excludes cash in the local government investment pool. The pie chart shows really a significant portion of the portfolio, most of it in U.S. Treasuries, with a significant portion also in corporate bonds. And then the bar chart in the lower left shows the laddered maturities up to 5 years, and that allows us the opportunity to reinvest our money as things mature or access our money if we choose not to reinvest and we need the cash flow. Next slide demonstrates policy compliance. We're well within policy compliance for all of our various investment types. And then lastly, this slide shows our portfolio allocation over 4 quarters. And really the only significant changes is a slight increase to U.S. Treasuries and corporate bonds.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions for Joe? Go ahead, Councilman Boyd.
Just a comment. I have to make a comment because I do represent the council on this committee, and I just think Joe and the finance team do a phenomenal job. This is a big sum of money, right? And they keep close eyes on it and making sure they are being good steward of the city funds. So I just want to publicly say thank you and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. It's always good to hear from you. Thank you. All right, next up, we have ordinance amending Chapter 3.28, Business and Occupation Tax Code Update, and we have our Finance Director, Paula Painter, here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Council President Corr, members of City Council. So in front of you tonight is ordinance number 4534, and this ordinance is going to update the Kent City Code regulating our B&O taxes. In 2025, Senate Bill 5814 was passed by the legislature, and this bill redefined, or updated, I should say, the definition of sale at retail. So now there are items that were once considered services that are now considered retail. Those items are things like advertising services, live presentations, information technology services, police services, custom website and development services, and the sale of software or customizable software that's been pre-written. So these items now, prior to this, these items were subject to B&O tax under the services rate, which was 0.2%, and now they will be subject to the retailing rate of 0.1%. So that will be generating less B&O tax revenue as we move forward. However, that's going to be offset by the fact that we will now receive sales tax for those items at the portion of the sales tax that Kent would receive. So there is kind of a wash there, possibly with the opportunity to generate a little bit more revenue in the sales tax category. That's all that I have for you tonight. If I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Paula. Any questions for Paula? Councilor Boyce.
What's the timing of this year? Do they happen simultaneously, or one are going to go down and one going to go up? So
sales tax actually went up beginning October 1st. Okay. So that already went into effect. The change in this ordinance related to B&O tax is effective as of January 1, 2026. So B&O like tax is paid on a quarterly basis, so we'll start seeing revenue from that adjusted revenue in April.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll make a motion. I move to adopt ordinance number 4534, amending Chapter 3.28 of the Kent City Code to update the city's business and occupation tax classifications in alignment with the Association of Washington Cities Model Ordinance and state law.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Paula. All right, next up we have our CAO, Pat Fitzpatrick, with the next 2 items. First one, advisory boards and commissions.
Good afternoon, Council President. Good afternoon, Council. We're pulling up the presentation here. Okay, so as you know, the City of Kent has several boards and commissions that serve as an advisory body to the council and the mayor. And some of these boards are Kent-specific, and some are required by state law. So the Kent-specific ones are developed through ordinance. The state law are mentioned in ordinance, and typically we just follow state law on those. These boards are established to comply with state law requirements or to provide the mayor and council with advisory information. And I just want to note, for the purposes of this conversation, I want to make really clear that these, as you know, are not the only input points for our community. We have, as you know, as we've gone through, for example, the comp plan, so many community meetings on that. Our traffic safety plan, there's so many opportunities for public input there. So this is one aspect of the ability of the public to participate in the processes that we go through here at the city. So I think that's really important to understand. Parks plans too, when we develop a plan for a park, we have a lot of community outreach and events and whatnot. We do Kent 101, there's all kinds of opportunities for input into city functioning. So this is but one aspect of the process we use here. All right. You've heard a lot of this before, but I think it's worth kind of taking a comprehensive look. Boards require staff support, as you know. They're supported by the department that most closely associates with the subject matter of the board. And there are a lot of people in the audience here to answer questions toward the end of if you have questions regarding a particular board and their experience. But our staff does scheduling and holds meetings, prepares reports, recruits board members, and when board members are onboarded, there's a process that a lot of these boards go through. Some of it has to include OPMA training because some of these boards are subject to the Open Public Meetings Act. So, and then very importantly, all of these boards are kind of in the background coordinated by the clerk's office. So the clerk is making sure that information is getting out there. We have, we know when a board membership is about to expire, et cetera. Again, some of these boards are subject to the OPMA and some boards aren't. And there's a couple boards that are sometimes subject to the OPMA and other times are not. So it's a little bit complicated. All right, so as you know, we have term limits. And those term limits are either required by state law, and that's the Independent Salary Commission, which state law defines and mandates term limits there, or city code. That's all other committees. I do want to say that the Public Facilities District, Show Center, that's a separate entity that we can't really regulate in the term limits. That's up to them to decide. So I just want to make a note, we kind of have to set both the Salary Commission and the PFD board, the Show Center, aside for the purposes of this conversation. Prior to July 6, the boards were only subject to term limits if required by law, and that was the on and off button of the Salary Commission that's occurred over time. But then on July 6 of 21, the council passed an ordinance requiring term limits on all boards. And so that's where we've been for a while. I want to make very clear, the length of a person's term is not what we're talking about. It's only how many terms they can serve. And there's a distinction because some of our ordinances have longer terms than others. But what we're talking about is the term limits, all right? So just to make that clarification. And if you have questions of me as we're going through this, feel free to jump in and ask. So the key issue that we run into on a lot of these boards is those that are subject to the OPMA cannot function unless they have a quorum. So if we have a problem getting board members for that particular board, we run the risk of not being able to function as that board because we can't hold a meeting. And that'll come up here in a few minutes as you'll understand the importance there. So at the retreat, wow, almost a year ago, you all had a discussion about whether or not to consider lifting term limits. And so I worked with our staff to do a comprehensive review of what we do, what our experience has been, and that's why we're here today to talk about that. So when we were looking at the benefits or detriments of term limits, we looked at the history of staffing the boards and whether we had challenges. We looked at impact on staff operations, because these do require staff attention. Whether or not having enough board members might jeopardize compliance with state law. That's the OPMA issue I just talked about. And then we also kind of considered the body of work they do. Are they just advisory, or do they have like a real function that is absolutely necessary to what we're doing here? So we looked at all of that. This next slide here kind of it's a little bit off the page there, but it summarizes kind of all the ins and outs of each of our boards. You'll notice I've crossed out the Independent Salary Commission and the PFD board, because we're not really talking about those tonight, but I threw them in there just to understand that they are part of the mix as well. So that's really a summary of what rules apply to each board. And then on the right-hand side, you see what our suggestion is as an option if you want to take action. One thing that I think is this has really been a focus a lot, and in fact, it just came up 2 weeks ago when we were doing a board appointment to the LTAC. The question is always, can't we just do more in advertising? There people are out there, they want to do this. If we just do a better job of trying to recruit people, everything's going to be okay, and that is not our experience. We are doing a lot. We have a website, links on our website, and I actually have some documentation here. If you could, sorry to do this right now, but there is a document that shows the checklist for the clerk that she works with, and then I just provided you the information about all the boards and commissions that's on our website, so you have it in one consolidated place. So going back to the recruiting side of it, applications are always accepted for our boards and commissions, whether we have an opening or not. Anyone can submit an application at any time. In addition to that, we advertise our openings on social media. And this period here, I want to reflect the period, just talk about the period that we analyzed. The period January 24th through 25th. That's when we were first reviewing this, and so we got this work done toward the end of spring of last year, and then we just waited for further instruction. So that's why that period is there. We didn't relook at advertising, but there has you can see, you can get a flavor for what we do with advertising for these spots. So we do social media, we do mayor's newsletter, and then Parks specifically does some things. Facebook pages for Parks, Peach Jar, no idea what that is, but I think it's a thing. I'm not a social media person. A lot of our boards and commissioners also reach out to former commissioners who might know somebody who would be interested, or they talk to their board and commission and say, hey, we're going to have an opening. Can you, if you have anybody in mind, please let us know. One of the things you'll see, I'll just save that and move on to the next thing. So some of the challenges we see are we have our positions open all the time. You can apply at any time, and somebody just wants to be on a board, so they apply to multiple boards. And our experience is that once they get appointed, they find out they're not really interested in that subject. And sometimes they'll show up to one meeting and they're gone. That's it. Other times, we have people who show up for a few meetings, and it either doesn't turn out like they expected it would, or they have something come up. Their job interferes, they have family issues, and they walk away from the board, and we have a vacancy. So we can have attendance at boards can be spotty, intermittent, and that also creates disengagement of the folks there. So it's a challenge. It can be a challenge to find people who are engaged in the subject matter for the board they are selected for. And so I guess I'll just put it that way. And then it might not turn out like they expect, and they disengage, and then we have an issue. So that happens. All right. Okay, so I want to real quick talk about the different boards that we are dealing with. We do not have, like I said, authority to deal with the Independent Salary Commission or the PFD Board, ShoWare, so we're not going to talk about that. But I do want to talk about those with term limit challenges. And so that's what I really want to focus on here. Left One Disability Board. This board is very difficult to staff because state law has specific requirements about who from the public can be on this board. You have to be, I can't remember the exact language of the rules, but a firefighter former firefighter or a police officer who lives within the city limits who wants to be on this board. We can't find anybody. We have to keep asking the same people to come back, and sometimes we have to beg them to stay. The challenge we have with both the Left Board and the Firefighters Relief and Pension Board are that these are state law mandated boards. We have to have a quorum, and if we don't have people on these boards, we can't function and we won't be in compliance with state law. So no matter what happens today, I am hoping that you will at least agree that we can carve these two out because they are difficult to staff. There are not too many eligible people who live in the city and very few who are interested in serving on this board. I want to talk about LTAC, and again, Michelle's here and she can pop, she's going to be up not long after me anyway, but she can pop in and talk about the issue that came up last time, just at the last committee meeting. This too has state law limitations, and this is another one where I strongly suggest, no matter what we do today, we carve this one out. You have to have hoteliers on this board. Kent doesn't have a lot of hotels. We just don't. If you're in Tukwila, you got a lot more hotels. You have a lot more available people to staff these. The other thing is hotels in Kent seem to change hands a lot. Some of them are being pulled out of the hotel market and converted into housing. This market, hotel managers change jobs a lot, so they might be interested one day and they're gone the next. So retaining members with experience supports the consistency in how we manage that program and award LTAC funds. And so we need stability on that board. So that is another one that creates a lot of challenges. The Kent Bicycle Advisory Board is another one that we've experienced a lot of challenges. You're targeting a specific group of cyclists who then would be interested in city government, who then would have the time to come here and be interested in the subject. There just aren't that many out there, and we consistently struggle with people. The other thing is, on this board in particular, we are put in a position where people who are really interested in this subject, they term out and we make them leave when they're the ones who are really interested, and then we have a heck of a time finding somebody to replace them. We have had an instance where we have had to ask people, tell them you've termed out, and then ask them to come back. And it's a tough thing because those are the volunteers that are really engaged in that subject. So that one can be difficult too. Civil Service Commission has some limitations. It's only a 3-member board, but that is a consistent board that is subject to the OPMA that we have to have people here for too. I would say that this board, we actually had an appeal to this board of somebody who was removed from a hiring list, and we had to have an outside attorney to come in on a conflict basis because our city attorney can't advise the board and staff in this issue. We have to hire another attorney to come in, and they handled that appeal. They did a great job. This work can be very important. We have had at least one experience when a long-time board member was removed and we were unable to find somebody else, so we had to ask that person to return. So that happens. Some of that, of course, is unavoidable. Some of it is really a nature of the subject matter and state eligibility requirements. 2 other boards, Human Services Board and the Arts Board, are kind of similar. Both of these boards are sometimes subject to the OPMA. So when they're for example, when Human Services is doing grant awards, that is open to, that process has to be open to the public because they are making a decision to go on to the council for consideration. So it's really important that we have enough staff members for that. This information is really important, and it kind of shows you a trend that I feel we're seeing across all of our boards. And if you go to sorry, I'm having trouble seeing. I probably need to borrow council member Boyce's glasses, but.
They're for Kurt only, not you.
Oh, Kurt's glasses. But the third bullet, you'll see that we had a ton of applicants in 2020 and 2022, 43 for 9 positions. And since then, it's really, really tapered off. And if anything, we've upped our advertisement. You see the Arts Commission, we've had the same experience there. And I don't know if that's a societal thing. I can't tell you. I don't know the why behind that. But these are 2 boards where we haven't historically had good application energy toward that, but that has tapered off. These 2 boards are important to have some consistency on them because they are making recommendations. So, for example, the Human Services Board makes the grant recommendations. It requires a lot of training, and it's very helpful to have at least some board members on there with a lot of experience, and they know the history and they understand how the process works, and they can act as as de facto leaders of the process during these boards. Same thing for the Arts Commission. I'll just say that the other thing that's challenging is if you look at the second bullet, this comes into play when we have applications that you can file for any board. A quarter of the applicants identify a different board as their first choice on both of these, and then they're interviewed and appointed to this board. So that can create challenges. Julie and staff are here, and they can speak to these boards.
I have a question, Pat.
Yeah. Yep.
So when you're talking about, like, you want to have some experience and the new board members coming in, do we not have it like tiered? So who's, staying and when their term is expiring, or is it just all expiring at the same time?
They don't expire at the same time. No.
Okay.
They expire incrementally.
Yeah, that's what I
Also,
thought.
what I think sometimes happens is you have your most experienced, most engaged members, time out, they're gone, they're not coming back. And you're left with potentially less experienced and less engaged members. And that's a reality we see. Can we get over it? Of course, we're managing. It's a lot, and it's a lot of work, and it creates multiple training requirements. We have to retrain everybody for OPMA, and particularly for human services, they go through a training process, an equity-related training, grant awarding training. So and again, this is an imperfect system, fully admit that. So, and then the last one, Parks Commission, we have, these numbers are kind of telling just for this commission itself. 32% resigned before completion of the first term, and 20% complete 2 full terms. There is natural attrition on all of these boards. It happens regardless of whether we have term limits or not. So some people just they time out, or they're done, or they move on, they move, they get a new job, family commitments come into play. So there is turnover on all of these boards. Civil Service Commission was a little bit, for a while, a little bit of a outlier in that time. But for almost all these commissions, we do have attrition. It's just natural. The 2 boards that I skipped, sorry. There are 2 boards we don't have a problem. DEIB, we have a ton of interest in that board, and it is not dissipated at all. And then Land Use and Planning Board is that is a board that is kind of there's a lot to do there. There are a lot of people interested in land use decisions, and so we have a ton of interest, and we are not asking the council to lift the term limits on these 2 boards. It's not necessary. If you choose to, that's fine. We'll manage, of course, but those 2 boards do not present any challenge to us at all. I'll just make it clear on that. Okay. So, I have presented you with 2 options that you can change and adjust as you wish. The options are to have term limits for some boards but not others, or to eliminate them altogether, or to not do anything and term limits remain. You could also take the recommendation of eliminate term limits for some boards and carve a couple out or put a couple in. However you want to make that mix, that's fine. We can do whatever you want to do. If you choose to take action, we'll need some time to write the ordinance, of course. Begging you for a little time so that doesn't come back in 2 weeks, because law department's slammed right now. So I would suggest, if you want to make a change, that we come back in a couple of council meetings, first meeting in April, with a proposed ordinance for you to consider. And so that's kind of where we are. I have the folks from all the boards here, so if you have a question about a particular board, I'm sure they can get up and give you some of the details that I can't really give on those. So I can take questions. If you have questions for me, I'd be happy to take them now or whenever.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you for putting together this very detailed presentation. Definitely helps see where we are, and looks like, wow, this is blowing up. Councilmember Boyce.
Thank you, Madam President. Appreciate that. Thanks, Pat. I think when we first implemented it, I think there was good intention on trying to make sure that people who may or may not have the opportunity to get on the committees, that's the whole purpose of trying to open it up, to make sure we can have people who want to be able to join the committees. But also, when I look at the data here that you're showing, to me, it's pretty clear that, that if I want to be on a committee, I can be on a committee, right? So, there's no question for most of these that, there's not a lack of ability to be on the commission. So me, I would say, just my own thought is just to kind of, go back and eliminate term limit for all of the board and commission. That would be me, right? Just based on the data that you just presented. So that's my 2 cents.
Councilmember Troutner.
Thank you, Madam President. I think when we did this back in 2021, I was one of the few people that did not support this at all. And I think it was partly because, like Councilmember Boyce said, we had good intentions of creating diversity across our boards, but in listening to staff, it was going to be a difficult challenge, and it has proven to be a difficult challenge. I am happy to support the staff recommendation of moving forward with limits on all boards and commissions, with the exception of DEIB and the Land Use and Planning Board. Thank you.
Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you for this presentation, Pat. I have a question for you and then a question for Maria and Uriel before I give my opinion. Do you know why people are applying for multiple boards? Is it part of the application?
No, the application allows you to apply for any board you want to, and so some people want to be involved, so they apply to multiples. But why they apply to specific boards, I don't know.
Okay, so it's like it's built into the application
Correct.
that you can choose more than one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My question is, why do you have so many people interested in your board? And then do you feel like there are people who really want to be on there who get kicked off due to the term limits?
Good afternoon, Council. I think the reason why the board is really popular is because we're in a moment in time when people want to do something about what's happening. So we are getting more applications. We do have applicants who applied about 3 or 4 years ago who are still on the waiting list. So it takes time for them to get on the board. But the reality is that we're facing a moment where people are interested in doing more than just sitting down. So I think that's why we're getting a lot of applications.
Do you think it would negatively impact you to lose your more seasoned members?
I would say yes, because part of a few of them on the board were part of the co-designing teams who created the strategic plan that we're currently implementing. So yes, I believe that would be a detriment to the work, but at the same time, I feel like there's enough people out in our community who are interested in joining and doing work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I don't foresee any limitations as far as getting more applications.
Okay, so your recommendation is to keep the term limits.
Yes, I think we're okay with 3 terms at 2 years per term.
Okay, thank you. Okay, when we first implemented this, I was on the board, and I ended up voting in favor of it because I understood the concept that we wanted to make sure that everyone had a chance to serve. That said, with all of this evidence in front of us and having served on the Human Services Commission now for quite a few years, I see how important it is to have historical knowledge on the boards. It was also important when I served on the Parks Commission to have seasoned members who are engaged, who want to be there. The grant-making process for the Human Services Commission is very labor-intensive, and it's helpful to have people who are willing to be there, to spend the time, not only during the meetings, but in their own free time on this process. And unfortunately, we have lost some good members, and we also now have newer members who, sometimes they only stay for a few meetings and they're not as engaged. So I would support getting rid of term limits for all but Land Use Planning Board and the DEIB Board.
Thank you. Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you, Council President. So I was one of the members that championed the term limits in the first place. And the reason for that was because myself and other council members had been approached by community members that wanted to serve. They had filled out the application online, and there was no openings, and there was no future openings at that time. So this was put together, and we did have a couple caveats that we specifically took into consideration. But the purpose of this was to open up our boards and commissions to new people that wanted to serve. We also had Kent 101, so we had graduates coming out of there that wanted to serve. I do have a couple questions, and I don't know, Pat, if this is for you or if this is for some of the audience members, but I'm curious, between 2021 and today, have we had new members who are engaged join?
I'm going to just venture a guess, of course.
Okay.
Absolutely. No question. I mean, I
And then my follow-up question is, without term limits, were those seats for those engaged individuals, would they have been available?
I'm going to say, without exact knowledge on particular boards, that there would be some seats available. I think we've had a lot of people just leave because of life circumstance. That happens. That's a natural attrition thing, but I don't have the numbers on that.
That actually brings up my next question, though, is I'm unclear how this attrition of 27% and 12% in that first term, I'm unclear how term limits being removed would change that. Like you said, there's life situations.
Right. And again, I don't interview the people who apply for the board, or most importantly, don't apply for the board. I have no idea. I'm in a venture, this is a guess, not grounded in fact, I want to be very clear. But when the council instituted term limits, there was a lot of social things going on at the time, and it was new stuff. And I think that there has been not a change in perception, but I believe that there was a really hard focus on how government is working. And I'm not saying that has changed, but I think the energy behind it might have. I just look at the years and what was going on in this country during those years, and it tells me a story, and that's all I'm thinking. I can't say it's factual. We do what we can to advertise for these boards, and we can't force people to apply. We just can't. We also, I don't know what else we can do. The answer is always, can't we do more to advertise? Can't we do more to advertise? I think the answer is always yes, but at what point do we say we're doing enough and we're doing what we can, and the question is whether it's working or it's not. And I want to be very clear, this is a council discretionary decision. Our staff has been working in this way from day one, and we will continue tomorrow, and it's whatever decision is made, we are okay with. The numbers do tell a story, though, and so We want to make sure you have that when you're making your decision.
Pat, I think Councilmember Larmer's question was, for example, like Parks Commission, they have 32% resign before completion of first term. Like, is that just recently, or was it the case before as well?
I would have to lean on Julie for that, so.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Yes, we have had turnover, and we're full now, which is good, but we do have turnover. And to kind of go back to the question prior that you had, Councilmember Larmer, is there are people that sit in seats that are not as engaged, where if they were not there or we had prior, we definitely could have more activities and more movement kind of attending, or attendance is slow or things like that. Because when they did the update, it's very difficult to also remove someone from a commission if they haven't attended 2 or 3 in a row and things like that too. So it's just difficult to kind of manage that dynamic.
Do we not have attendance requirements for commissions?
We try to, but it's very difficult to, like, if you, I don't have the bylaws in front of me, but if you look, you've got to, it's an agreement between you and the chair and the mayor, and, so it's really complicated, and sometimes they use the word excused, absences versus unexcused, and it's like, well, what's excused, what's on, so there's just, I don't feel like it or whatever, and then you've got commission of 12, but really 5 or 6 are regulars, but then how do you remove and get people that really want to come in and be engaged?
I think we should have some type of attendance requirements.
I agree.
For sure. Because you signed up for that. Councilmember Shoker.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. If we were to move forward with this, eliminating term limits for some of the boards and commissions, would there be an opportunity for council to revisit this if future recruitment improves? And is there a way for us to prioritize or consider new applicants when there is interest from residents who want to serve?
So I would just say council can change the ordinance whenever it wants. So absolutely. As far as, I don't know how we create position openings simply because there's interest without asking somebody to leave. And if we're going to ask somebody to leave, I think it's appropriate to do that through a term limit. I mean, it's all, or else we're put in a position of almost having to fire board members, and I don't want to have to do that. Right?
That's why we did that in the first place.
Yeah, I hope that does that answer your question, Councilmember Shoker?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. And I think as we heard from my colleagues, the intention, Councilmember Boyd.
Yes, I'm also in favor of that first option to eliminate term limits for some boards, like the DEIB and Land Use and Planning.
No, we would keep.
Well, not, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we'll keep those two. But for the elimination of term limits recommended for the following boards, I'm thinking instead of having term limits for them, let's have a term in review, say after 4 and 5 years. Say if a person been on the commission for maybe 4 years, at that 4 years, have a review of that person on the board to see whether or not he still want to be on it. And then at the same time, if there's somebody who's challenged him that wants to get on the board, have a review of that person to see if they want to replace the individual that's been on the board for more than 4 years. And so instead of having a term limit, like I said, let's have a term in review after maybe 4 years.
Kind of muddy.
I think that's kind of what we had that's what we had before. That's what we had before, and people were staying on like 10, 12, 20 years.
I mean, and was there an opportunity for them to be challenged by another person who wanted to get on the board and replace them? I mean, did we have that?
I'll just say this isn't an electorate kind of process. This is these are all volunteers.
And they're appointed by the mayor.
But I'm saying if we have so many people on the board and they've been there so many years and another person wants to get on the board, can that person challenge that person? Like another person, an applicant, could he challenge that person and say,
I'm not sure what the challenging would be, Councilmember Boyd.
To
These are
replace them.
appointed by the mayor.
oh, they are? Okay.
So we get applications and city clerk reviews them, and then mayor schedules interviews these individuals, and then they're brought forward to the council for confirmation.
Okay.
and we confirm that in our council meetings.
Yep.
So that's the process.
Okay, well, that was my idea, so.
Councilmember Troutner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I know staff spent a large amount of time on this. They spent time on it back in 2021 and time on it again to be able to bring this presentation forward. So I want to say thank you very much for all of you, a lot of you in the room today. Just to clarify, what we're looking at as far as these considerations are recommendations from staff that are dealing with this issue, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, so my comment was basically, as I was finishing up, that we've heard from staff and we've heard from community. I am okay with keeping term limits for the 2 boards and moving forward, removing for the rest. And we can, if we hear from community members or we keep an eye on, when we get our confirmations in front of us during council meetings, kind of keeping track, as council members, and see that if there needs to be a change needs to be brought up, then we can bring it up again, maybe down the road sometime. So, but that's where I am at. Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you for that, Council President. I think it would also be very helpful for everyone if, we do hear from community that they want to join a board and they're not able. Let's try to keep track of that and let's get their name and see, what board they want to join so we can see if there's an issue and maybe work with staff on that.
And I'm going to, I will ask law to work on making this ordinance an on-off button. So if we need to turn it back on, we can easily do that if council wants to make this decision. Because I think in the past it's been a lift to change ordinances. So I think we can find ways to do that efficiently. For the record, I'm seeing 4 votes in favor of ending term limits, 1 of those ending all term limits, 3 votes ending all but DEIB and Land Use and Planning Board.
Councilmember Boyce, and then Councilmember Larmer has comments.
Yeah, I have to listen to everybody. I'm okay with the first option exception for DIB board and LU PB, right? So I'm okay with the majority. You with me?
Larmer.
Okay.
So I just want to weigh in. I would actually be willing to exempt the state level boards only. So that would be the Civil Service, Lodging Tax Advisory, LEOFF, and the Firefighters Relief and Pension. That would be my suggestion, that we keep it in place for the others.
Okay, so I think we've heard from everyone but Councilmember Shoker, but I set this up so that we could get some direction through a motion. And there's options in there, and you can adjust that motion as you all see fit. But I think it's really important before we kind of move forward on this that we have some pretty clear direction on what kind of ordinance to bring.
Are there any comments about Councilmember Larmer's suggestion? Okay. All right. So seems like with the majority, I'm going to make the motion to direct city attorney to prepare an ordinance eliminating term limits for Kent's boards and commissions with the exception of the DEIB board and the Land Use and Planning Board.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion?
Just real quickly, I think, we as council member, right, and what we do, we kind of make decisions based on data, right? And I know we do things for good intention, but we hear from the people in the community, and we try to make the adjustment. But also, there's times, when you look at the data, it may say, okay, that may not be the case. So to me, I'm just making a decision based on what's been presented to me, right? And I think there's options where people who want to get on the boards, I think there's a way to continue to do that as well, too. So I definitely support the motion.
Councilmember Larmer?
Oh, sorry. No, that was just one.
Okay. Councilmember Michaud?
Thank you, Council President. I just want to thank Pat and all the staff for putting a lot of work into this. I appreciate you doing that. And to future work from law on this, so thank you.
All right, any other comments and discussion?
I just
Council-
wanted to quickly say that, I value bringing new voices into civic spaces, so I hope that we'll continue to do that outreach and encouraging residents to step into these roles. But given the current challenges with recruitment and participation, and thank you to staff for presenting all the data to us, I also support the first option of eliminating term limits except for the DEIB board and the other.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays?
Nay.
All right, we have one nay, motion passes. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
And you're up again just to give brief intro on the resolution.
Yep, brief introduction on this one. So in alignment with the city's mission to build a safe, thriving, sustainable, and inclusive community, it was requested that staff provide the city council with a resolution to reaffirm its commitment to compliance with the Keep Washington Working Act, which is found in part in section 10.93160 of the revised Code of Washington, and to affirm that no member of the Kent community should hesitate in seeking the assistance of the Kent Police Department or accessing all available city services. So a resolution to that end was prepared, and you have that there, and I think that's open for your all's discussion.
Thank you. So we have resolution of the council confirming Kent's commitment to Washington's Keep Washington Working Act. Thank you, Pat, for putting this together. I am going to look at Councilmember Shoker to provide some information on this.
Yes, thank you. So what this resolution does is it reaffirms that the City of Kent complies with the Keeping Washington Working Act and remains focused on local public safety and support. There is unease in our community right now when residents feel uncertain about how their local government operates, and that uncertainty can impact whether they seek services, report crimes, and engage with the city, and that ultimately affects public safety and community trust. This resolution reinforces that the city services are available to all, and that our role as a local government is to serve the entire community. It reaffirms our support for, immigrant and refugee neighbors, that ensures that all residents understand that they can access city services with support and not without fear. It also reaffirms that our city follows the Washington state law and that our local resources are focused on local public safety priorities, and builds on the communication that's already been shared by the Kent Police Department and the mayor's office, and ensures that that message is also fully supported by the council. I also want to thank our city staff for preparing this resolution and for working through drafts with me and the council president. I appreciate the thoughtful collaboration and care that went into this process, and I also want to thank our staff and to the Kent Police Department for the work that you do every day to support the entire community and keep our residents safe.
And with that, thank you, Councilmember Shoker. And as Councilmember Shoker mentioned, that we have received comments from our community members and questions and concerns, and that's why this was brought forward. We do have, there's been communication that went out from our police department and mayor's office already. So with that, I'm going to ask for any comments. All right. Okay, I'm going to read the resolution and then we'll have discussion. I move to adopt resolution number 2102, affirming and supporting the city's commitment to the requirements of the Keep Washington Working Act and providing that city services are available to all members of the Kent community.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Councilmember Troutner.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, I want to thank city staff and all of the people that put this together. I know these resolutions do take some time to get it right. I do know city administration did make a statement earlier, so this resolution doesn't change anything. The city is continuing to do this work, so I just want to make sure that that gets noted. Thank you.
All right, any other comments? All right, with that, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Thank you so much. All right. Next, we have our ECD, Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you, Council President. So we have two items tonight. We're going to start with the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee grant awards. Michelle Wilmot.
Good afternoon, Council President, council members.
Tonight, I'm here to present the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's recommendation for two different grant awards totaling $65,000 to support events that were held at Acceso Showware earlier this year. Just as a reminder, the lodging tax revenues are collected on hotel and motel stays of less than 30 days, and a portion of those revenues are returned back to the city to support tourism and events and activities that attract visitors, and we hope that they are more than 50 miles away who will come to Kent and stay the night, dine, and shop in our community. State law requires that these funds be reviewed by the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, and as we talked about earlier, the committee is structured with equal representation from the hospitality industry and organizations that stage events or activities here in our community. Their role is to review applications and recommend the projects to bring visitors to Kent. Under state law, just for your reminder too, council may only approve recipients from the list recommended by the Lodging Tax Committee and in the amounts recommended. If you wish to change that, not that it's ever happened, but I'm just letting you know, if you wish to change the recipient or the funding amount, the need that your recommendation would have to go back to the Lodging Tax Committee for further review and consideration. So that's just a reminder on process. At its last meeting, February 26th, the Lodging Tax Committee reviewed applications and recommended 2 grant awards connected to sports events that took place in Kent in January, and that is historically a very slow time in Kent for our hotel industry in particular. The first one is for $50,000 for the Gut Check Wrestling tournaments that happened January 2nd and 3rd. And January 9th and 10th, they had 2 consecutive events, 2 weekends, one for girls and one for boys wrestling at Showware. They have been hosted in Kent for many years. I think we're actually coming up on 10 years, and they continue to grow, especially with national recognition, given that we have Canadian teams coming down. The organizers of these events anticipate nearly 6,000 people coming to Kent on those 2 weekends, and that includes not only the athletes themselves, but their coaches, families, and fans traveling from around the region and other states. That event in particular generates a significant number of overnight stays and restaurant visits during one of the slowest periods of the year, as I said. The second recommendation is for $15,000 for the King Showcase. It's a high school basketball event that is at Showware Center on Martin Luther King Day. This one brings 7 different basketball games showcasing top high school kids from Washington and Oregon, and attracts about 3,000 attendees throughout the day. That's teams and their families coming to Kent to participate and visit our hotels, restaurants, and retail, while Showware is a big attraction for these folks. Both of these events align well with the lodging tax revenues because they bring visitors into Kent during a really slow time, and generally people coming from outside of 50 miles away, which is one of the state recommended requirements. With the council approval, we would enter into a standard lodging tax grant agreement with these organizations, and those agreements provide all the provisions and rules that go into granting these organizations, and post-reporting attendance and economic impact is a requirement also that we're required to submit to the state. So again, I'm asking for council's approval on behalf of our Lodging Tax Committee for 2 awards totaling $65,000. 50 for the Gut Check Wrestling Tournament. That was for both boys and girls over 2 weekends in January. And then the $15,000 for the King Showcase High School Basketball event that happened on Martin Luther King Day. And with your approval, that will go on to the consent calendar for this evening's council meeting. I'm happy to take any questions.
Were there any other questions on there? Okay. I have a question, Michelle. First, I totally support these two organizations. Don't have a problem with that. I do have a question, though. The fact that we are approving these post the event, is there some way to is it our cycle that we're doing this retroactively? Because it feels like these organizations could probably use the money up front to put it on. Is there some?
That's a very good question, and this is a one-time situation tied to the city, the fact that the city did not open a grant window this last year in 2025 because our revenues have been reduced over the past couple of years. We're still not recovered to pre-COVID levels. Business travel has drastically reduced. And as was mentioned earlier, some of our hotels have actually been converted. That said, the Lodging Tax Committee did believe that these two organizations, we didn't have a grant process open last year, that we should support these two particular organizations and their longstanding activity and economic activity they bring to Kent to fund them. This is retroactive. This is not meant to be a new process. It is simply filling a gap.
Okay.
That happened
So in the
this
future,
particular
it would normally, the money would be received
This
before the
is
event.
not intended to be a retroactive process.
Okay.
You're absolutely correct. And just on that note too, I'll let you know that the lodging tax grant application window is open now. And we are accepting applications through midnight on March 20th. So pass that around for those you might know who bring events and activities to the region.
Well said, Michelle. I do sit on this committee here. It was a one-off, and then the reason why we didn't open up last fall was just a lack of funding, right? But we also know from a hoteler perspective where it's low in January, right? Just allow we as a committee decide, okay, we will do these two because definitely put heads in bed, and also to prevent the hoteler. But definitely one-off. We just opened the process up yesterday, a couple of days ago, right? So we're looking forward to the new set of applicants coming in. So thank you.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I will read the motion. I move to award lodging tax grants to the recipients selected by the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee in the amounts recommended, authorizing the mayor to sign all agreements subject to final terms acceptable to the city attorney and ratify all acts consistent with this motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, with that, I'll ask for all those in favor.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Michelle.
Great, thank you.
Okay, next item, we have a resolution imposing a moratorium on additional or expanded jail, correctional, or other detention facilities.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity this afternoon. Council President, members of council, celebration of the two events. Brought my notes up here, and I have my reading glasses. But I thought in celebration of that moment, I'd read to you just a little bit of the presentation. First thing I want to get out there is presenting this afternoon a resolution to council that, if approved, would establish a 6-month moratorium on the establishment or creation of any new converted properties to be used as jails, corrections, or other detention facilities to house people, unless that property is currently being used lawfully for that purpose. So big distinction there. It won't affect city jail, regional justice center facility in its current state. Moratorium would additionally prohibit the expansion of any current jail, corrections, or detention facility. So those are factors to consider here. Some of the things that have, this is unusual, admittedly, for ECD to bring forward a moratorium. Frankly, I think it's been done twice under my tenure here at the city, 27 years. So pretty unique circumstances that have come to this. They're not going to be a mystery to council listening to the news. A lot of our neighboring cities and jurisdictions, I think King County is the latest this afternoon at about 3 or 3:30, passed an ordinance doing the same. So we have King County, Seattle, SeaTac, Tukwila, Renton. There might be others, and they're in various states of either considering or have adopted this type of scenario. The reason I'm bringing it up, and I'm it's so important for us as a community to really kind of complete this step here this afternoon is going to be our comp plan ink is just now dry. It was about a year ago, so December 24, council adopted our 20-year plan. That 20-year plan had a lot of work that went behind it. Ton of community input, gathering countless meetings that council and staff done together in this room and then out in the community. It's a shared long-term vision, guide decision-making, be utilized by staff, elected officials, and stakeholders engaged in funding growth and development initiatives over the next 20 years. That's the big umbrella of what we do under that 20-year plan. The plan's vision integrated extensive community input, as we discussed, reflective of the entire Kent community. So the Puget Sound Regional Council's Vision 2050, which is their big plan, another kind of guiding body that dictates a lot of the things that we have to do, include, or consider minimally for our community, and all the other jurisdictions have to as well. King County, countywide planning policies, the visions of our other recently adopted plans, think Parks and Open Space Plan, Transportation Master Planning. Rally the Valley is going to be central to our discussion here this afternoon. The Kent Housing Options Plan, everything all the way down to stormwater management type plans. The comp plan itself establishes, as you know, goals, policies, and really big initiatives. How do we incent or otherwise get development to happen the way that the City Council has now put fingerprints on our design? How do we want it to go forward? Some of the goals included in our comp plan of particular relevance here this afternoon for this one is one of our land use goals. So city officials are to promote the Kent Industrial Valley and the Manufacturing and Industrial Center as a manufacturing and industrial hub through a wide variety of manufacturing, yes, warehousing, and related industrial land uses, as well as appropriate supportive uses that promote economic activity. Purpose of this goal is to discourage and limit land uses other than manufacturing, high technology, and warehousing within the boundaries of Kent's Manufacturing and Industrial Center. Okay, a lot of words, and a lot of things. Here's why it's super important. I've been here a long time, and Kent has done our part. We frankly have done a lot for the region's needs. There's a term called essential public facilities that has a very specific meaning, but that's included in some of the things where we have always been open to our partners, meaning other jurisdictions, neighbors, other forms of government, in citing large land consumptive uses in our community. Again, I don't want to debate the merits of those investments because most of them are outwardly positive. Regional transit facilities. We have commuter rail, heavy stop in our downtown. We have 2 light rail stations on the West Hill. Those are fabulous things. What they also are very land consumptive, where other uses no longer have the opportunity to double dip or use that property. Before my time here, we have 2 landfills in our physical boundary. It's 200 acres, has the same criteria. You no longer can take advantage of that property, 200 acres in our community, for more active, viable, dynamic uses that we so desperately need for our economic circumstance. We have the regional, Norm Mailing Regional Justice Center. So its associated detention facility as a part of that facility is in our downtown. We have our own city jail. Again, we're not debating the merits of those things. What we are saying is that no other uses now get to double dip or compete for that, the square footage, the capacity that they are displacing. You move up into the valley. We have partners in our community. King County just purchased another private property, so a manufacturing facility in our industrial valley for an expansion of use. And again, I'm not debating the merits of this because I love dogs. We have an animal shelter, right? So as it turns out, we have 2 now. We have the existing, formerly existing one, and now we have a new expanded one. It's another private property that's off of the roll for property taxes. And then more important to kind of central to my conversation here with you this afternoon is the opportunity cost of what is not going to be going on in that building. So love dogs, it's not the issue. It's we lost an opportunity to have more industry and active dynamic uses that we need fiscally for our community. So as you start going through and you look at the acreage and displacement, going back to PSRC establishes goals, targets for communities. So they have established what's called a MIC, or a Manufacturing Industrial Center, in our North Valley, think Industrial Center. And we have our Regional Growth Center in our downtown, kind of a, think James down to Kent, Des Moines, the highway to, I think roughly Jason, is the polygon I'm describing here. Within that land area, just under 64%, it's 63.8% of the property in that polygon, our regional growth center, is exempt. So it is not privately controlled property. It's subsidized property, publicly owned. Those are big hurdles for everyone in this room to not work around. We simply have to overcome those. So we are working with less than others have, and that is a real challenge. Things like this afternoon, importance of moratorium for the type of land consumptive use when we have very little as an alternate is critically important for our community. And so part of the moratorium process, again, if council so chooses to adopt this afternoon or later this evening, there is a requirement. Within 60 days, we have to have a public hearing. I think that date has been set. From memory, April 7th is coming to mind. I don't want to look that way. I think that's right. My staff will be up here. It won't be me. My staff will come prepared to address public comments and then really go through some of the goals and policies that council has adopted through what should be our guiding document here, and that is our comp plan. So we can give you a lot more specifics. I will say the recitals included in your packet this afternoon are fantastic. It sets the stage for really the decision on at least the recommendation from staff standpoint, why this is so critical for the city to consider going forward. I'm going to end it there. I'm happy to attempt to answer any questions that you might have, but just...
Any questions? Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Councilmember Larmer. Thank you so much for your work on this, Kurt. I know that you and Tammy spent a lot of time this weekend working on this, so I appreciate that. Also, thank you to my fellow council members for bringing this to our council president. Yes, what Kurt said. No one during our comp plan process, during all of that, outreach that we did, I don't think that anyone said, let's build another jail. We already have one too many jails in Kent, one that is right next to our community center and right in the middle of our downtown. Kent has done our fair share, and like Kurt said, we need to use that, our properties for other things. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Anyone else?
I have a comment, Ken. Thank you, Councilmember Larmer. Thank you, Kurt, for bringing this forward and your great presentation with your glasses and your notes. So congratulations. Yes. Congratulations on being prepared. Thank you. He knows. No, good job, Kurt. As Councilmember Michaud mentioned, like having a jail in Kent would be lasting impacts, and we need to be very strategic, thoughtful about how we use our limited land we have in Kent and ensure that it aligns with our long-term vision. And we already have limited resources for our tax base. So I appreciate your thoughtfulness into this, and we'll have this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, so, Councilmember Michaud.
Is there any way to expedite this?
Might need some legal advice. I think this evening it will show up on the consent calendar. Should have mentioned that. So it's going to be before you for a decision in a matter of hours. Effective date on moratorium.
This would be effective upon your adoption if you were to adopt it tonight. Okay. One limitation on it is that we do have to have the public hearing in 60 days. So that is scheduled for April 7th. We'll be at your council meeting at 7 o'clock that night.
But it's still effective
it's still
tonight
effective today,
if it gets
yes.
approved? Okay,
yep.
Thank you.
And actually, while I have you both up here, I do want to just thank you both
Tammy as well, because I know you guys did work on this weekend, so I appreciate that very much. So if there's no further questions, I will go ahead and read the motion. I move to adopt Resolution 2103, which sets a future public hearing date and imposes a 6-month moratorium on the location, establishment, change of use, expansion, or development of any property in the city of Kent to be used as a jail, corrections, or other detention facility to house people.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? With that, I will ask for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Larmer. Next up, we have Parks. Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you so much, Council President. We have one item tonight, and we have Marina and Christine here to present.
Hello, thank you. I'm going to be very brief. I just wanted to come up and do a quick refresh on 1590 and what that is, because you'll see that referred to regarding this contract that we're bringing before you this evening. House Bill 1590 is state law, and it allowed us to retain a portion of existing sales tax to be spent on housing and homelessness. If you'll recall, most cities in King County chose to allow King County to administer those funds, and that's how they are funding the Health Through Housing program. But Kent and a few other jurisdictions did choose to adopt the sales tax within our own jurisdiction. So there is a mandatory 60-40 split with those funds. 60% has to be spent on capital, and we do pool those funds with SCIP for the development of affordable housing. There is also 40% that can be spent on services, and so that's what we're here talking about tonight. That's where the funding for this pilot program comes from. So I'm going to let Christine talk you through the Salvation Army second year of this pilot. So I'll do that, but I just wanted to remind you of where the funding comes from, because it is a little bit different than most of our normal general fund contracts.
Good evening, Council. So I'm going to do a quick overview of the Salvation Army street level program for the first year. Street level focuses on a small group of individuals who are the highest utilizers of emergency services. They represent our repeated police contacts, EMS calls, ER visits, and ongoing system involvement. And instead of waiting for the next crisis, this team actually goes out and engages people proactively. They meet them where they are. They go out into the encampments. They go out, meet them on the sidewalks and other service locations. The goal is really simple. It's to build those relationships, to move those really difficult to serve folks with the biggest barriers towards treatment and housing. In year one, the team served 285 unduplicated individuals. That's nearly 1,000 engagements. Of those, 144 individuals were placed into housing, 95 were placed into shelter. That additionally includes a measure that's not really listed, but that's placement into treatment services, which results into housing. So that's part of that number as well. So we measure our success through that engagement, which is with those high utilizers, movement towards shelter, treatment, and housing, stronger coordination with the city and county partners, and getting better data about our community needs with those interactions. And it also alleviates a lot of that pressure on our emergency services and systems in place. It relieves some of the officers and what they're doing. It's not to replace that engagement, but to add to, if you will. It shifts from a constant response to stabilization and prevention. It aligns with public safety goals and human services priorities, and it focuses resources where they have the greatest impact. So I'll thank you on that, and if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Christine. Let's say that louder. 144 people into housing, 95 into shelter in 1 year from this program. That's incredible. Maybe at some point, council can get a briefing from the street team, because Human Services did, and it was pretty valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Councilmember Larmer.
I have a question. So I see here that So my question is, I do see here that the team is in Kent 2 days a week. Where are they the other days? And
It's at least 2 days a week, and realistically, it's closer to 4. The days that they are not here in Kent, they're actually in office doing the administrative side of things. So that's the case management piece. That's the working with the partners, the relationships they have with management companies as far as getting people into housing. So it's more that administrative side of the work.
Okay, so in reality, the entire work week is really dedicated to serving Kent?
Correct.
Okay.
For this particular team. They have additional teams in other communities.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe that officers can call these individuals at any time.
Yes. So the primary contact for the program is Tina Lewis, amazing woman, and she readily gives out her cell phone number. She's available 24 hours a day to connect people with services. And it's unique in that this program really does provide services outside of the constraints of some of our systems. We have lots of different funding sources that programs receive, which can limit them on how they respond. So they are really unique in that they work within those systems and have those relationships to allow them not to be so limited.
Councilmember Shoker?
And then Boyd.
Yes, so I recently had the opportunity to do a ride along with Kent PD, and they were out there with the Salvation Army outreach team. And as somebody who has experience, my background is working with youth and young adults experiencing homelessness. I was really impressed by the services that were being provided and the way that the team was able to connect with people and support them in real time. So thank you for identifying this opportunity, and it's exciting to me to have the Salvation Army consistently present in Kent, and I think it would be a valuable resource for our community.
Agreed. Councilmember Boyd?
Yes, I also like to make a note that I went out there with street level, and I worked with Tina Lewis, and she does an amazing job. She interacts with the individuals out there. She doesn't come at them, with the perspective that it was either or. She talks to them, and she like, that's why they call it street level. She talks to them at a street level, and she gets the job done. Just making a note. Tina Lewis is fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Council President?
Not a question. Thank you, Christina. Thank you for this. I just want to point out to, I guess, Pat, maybe this would be a workshop item to get presentation on Human Services and Salvation Army and the work that we're doing as just a update to the council. I think that would be beneficial to us. So thank you so much.
Christine, oh, never mind. I just saw it. I was going to ask how long this money goes through. It's through 2027. Any other questions? All right, I will read the motion. I move to authorize the mayor to sign the consultant services agreement with Salvation Army USA, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Parks Director and City Attorney.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Thank you so much. Back to you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember Show. We have Public Works, Councilmember Troutner.
Thank you, Madam President. We are going to start with the information only, which is the Local Road Safety Plan and Highway Safety Improvement Program grant opportunities. And I see that Eric is here.
Hello. Yes, thank you. Council President, council members, in the interest of time, I will try to be brief. So as you probably know, every 2 years, we update the Local Road Safety Plan, in part to apply for the HSIP grant process. And so the HSIP is the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which provides $30 million in federal safety funds for Washington every 2 years. And so you can see the Kent awards each of the last 3 cycles. And we, in all of them, Kent punches way above our weight class. The process is pretty simple. We complete the Local Road Safety Plan. We apply for the HSIP grants. WashDOT selects projects from our list. We do not tell them what projects, they choose those. When the grant funding is awarded, then we move into design and construction. So I have 3 candidate projects I would like your feedback on tonight. The first is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon here up on the East Hill. On the map in the lower left, you can see the Y, where Kent County makes a Y there at 256th. About half a mile to the east of that on 256th, at the intersection of 109th Avenue, is where we're recommending an RRFB, which is the yellow flashing lights. This has a lot of support from the school district. The next 2 projects are pedestrian hybrid beacons. These are the flashing red lights that require cars to stop. The 2 candidate locations would be on Kent Kangley at Lake Meridian Park, or right next to it, actually, next to that driveway, and then on Pacific Highway near 268th Street. So that is kind of a new project to you probably. It has gone through WashDOT's Complete Streets process and has a lot of support from them. And so there's just a map in the city of those 3 priority projects. This is the short list that we would allow WashDOT to choose from. So are there any feedback on these projects before I continue?
Everyone good with these? Anyone have comments or questions? All right.
Thank you very much. And this is kind of letting the credits roll. We've been very successful, as you can see. A lot of projects have been
Wonderful.
funded. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And I think in lieu of time, we are going to hold off on the Transportation Improvement Program presentation and move that to another time. So back to you, Council President.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Troutner. And with that, we are adjourned. We'll take a 5-minute break and back for council workshop. Thank you so much for all the work we have put into this. Good afternoon. Welcome to Kent City Council Workshop for Tuesday, March 3, 2026. We have one item on our agenda. It's Urban Forestry Programs and Policies. And we have our ECD Deputy Director, Matt Gilbert, here. Welcome.
Thank you, Council President and Council. I'm happy to be here tonight to start off a presentation that's been in the works since about August with a newly formed staff group we call the Urban Forestry Group. I guess that's our name now. That it's kind of emerged over time. But this is about 10 members from Parks, ECD, and Public Works. All of us have some role in stewarding the urban forest in Kent through regulations or through just being out there on the ground and collecting data and kind of everything in between. And so this group was formed largely in response to council interest in kind of where we are with the urban forest, things like canopy cover, specific sites, are the regulations that we impose on people with trees and how we manage things with our own property. Also, we have some upcoming state requirements for the stormwater code or the stormwater permit. It's called NPDES. It's a mouthful, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. So there's a permit there, and they have some requirements for us with the tree canopy. So we thought it'd be very wise for us to get together as a group and understand what each other does, so we can coordinate. And so we're here tonight to share a bit of, I'm here to talk about what we've learned. There are folks from the various departments and sections here to talk about the specifics of what they do to steward the urban forest, and then also talk about some of these upcoming requirements. And finally, we're here to listen and take some feedback from the council. I've built a couple pauses within this presentation for questions, but please feel free to interrupt. But we'll try to get through this efficiently. I wanted to start out with from a generalist's perspective. I kind of consider myself a generalist with a lot of the regs and topics that the city touches. About some of the big themes that we have kind of unearthed as we've talked in the urban forestry group. Some of them are obvious, some less so, but the first is that trees have a lot of benefits, and I think these are things we all kind of intuitively understand, that trees help provide cleaner air, shade, they help to lower energy costs if your home happens to be in the shade of a tree. They provide traffic calming functions when they're near a road, when they're nice and tall, and you kind of tend to slow down when you're driving next to tall things. They provide beauty and a sense of community pride. I think as we all could probably understand, when you drive through an old treed community, you have a sense of establishment, and there's some care and priority on beauty out in the public realm. And so they do send a message about the community. So they have a lot of different values. And that's just kind of scratching the surface. And there's a lot of literature on this that can quantify it, but this is just as a summary. So lots of benefits. Similarly, in the urban setting particularly, trees have a cost, because instead of just growing out in the forest and kind of managing themselves, even though that's not always the case, but to a degree, a forest can manage itself. But when you start to introduce the urban elements like streets and homes and buildings and things like that, it's a different game, I guess. You start to run into conflicts because trees need real estate, and so do we. They get into infrastructure, they can turn over sidewalks, they can create cracks in the roads and heaving and tripping hazards, things like that. Also, because trees require their own real estate to grow and thrive, there are some land use trade-offs that we have to think about there. And I think we've explored that a little bit with the community so far, where we talk about density. This kind of came up in the middle housing discussions, where we know that trees require real estate, and so do people, and there's got to be a balancing there. So that's really the hard part, or the part for a lot of discussion. There are really no easy answers there. Trees require active management in order to provide maximum benefit. And you can kind of squint and see the lines there. The heavy line coming off the tree there is the benefit of a tree with maintenance. And that's kind of getting back to all the benefits I talked about, that, they're healthy, they sequester carbon, they take it out of the air and store it. The shade, the oxygen, all those benefits really are maximized with care. That's pruning and watering and mulching and all the things that can keep a tree healthy. On the other hand, some of those other lines represent the benefits if you don't maintain trees. So you can probably stare at that for a while and absorb that. But basically, the message here is that urban trees require care to be beneficial and to lower the overall cost, because once trees get old and out of hand, they start to fall down and they lose limbs, they become a liability. So there really is an input cost requirement there to really get the benefit. Some other themes that I just wanted to share that are kind of high level, and maybe you can glean some of these from the other speakers tonight. What we've learned is that managing trees is complex, and there are multiple objectives, like kind of coming from the fact that we have lots of things happening in one space. The job of an urban forester is to make decisions and make trade-offs and to try to get the most value. Sometimes that means removing trees. I mean, if a sick tree is near your home or near a public space, we have to make decisions about when to take those out and how to evaluate the health, things like that. All of that takes time and money. The balanced choices is very important. So the distinction that I appreciate now more than I did before this group formed was that portions of the urban forest are like a garden. And in a garden, you pull the weeds and you prune and you tend to things very actively. And you put a lot of energy into that and you put a lot of time into it. Now, the more, that's what you're going to see in the landscape beds or along the streets, or when you're near buildings or near people or infrastructure. If you get out and you get some more space, then the urban forest behaves more like a forest, that it tends to be a little bit less maintenance, and it can work better with fewer human touches. Another big theme here that we've seen is that risk management is something we really have to think about. When trees fall down, they can hurt people and they can damage property. And when the trees belong to the city, especially, that's something that we have to take very seriously to prevent people and property from being damaged. As I said before, I say here, housing needs space, and so do trees. It's sort of like people in the built environment need space, and so we need to strike that balance. Two more. Community demands. This has come up in our group where folks have talked about, that you'll have some neighbors that border a park or a wetland or something like that, and some want to keep all of the trees, and some would rather they be taken down so they feel safer when the wind blows. And so there's often not a clear consensus from the community. Again, that kind of gets to that urban forester's job of making balanced decisions. Finally, there's no such thing as a money tree. So that all of this takes time and money, and again, it's forcing us to try to make prudent and balanced decisions. So those were my big lessons. I hope that you can add to those, or maybe you can think about those as the next presenters are up. We're going to start. There are four more of us tonight. First, we'll have Margaret Wagner from our Parks Department, Jennifer Harrell and Laura Heron from our Public Works Department, and Nate Schildmeyer from ECD. Nate will get up last to talk about regulations, and I think that'll be the next thing that we see coming. I just wanted to say that this will be the first of what I suspect to be several presentations around trees. I think each one of these people could probably do an hour by themselves on their own topics, so we're trying to keep this high level and prepare you for your future engagement with trees. So with that, I'll invite Margaret Wagner to come up and talk about data and what Parks does. So thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody again. I think you all have had the, good or bad fortune to hear me ramble at you before here, but it doesn't happen often. As Matt was saying, I'm going to talk a little bit. Oh, there's me. My name's Margaret. I'm in park operations. I will attempt to speak to a couple of the other, I'll make reference to things that Parks Planning does as they involve trees, but really mostly coming at it from the ops lens, which is where our natural resources management and urban forestry, maintaining Kent's trees operations live. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about the real high-level data before I get into park specifics. I know, or at least I believe, everybody has seen the King Conservation District canopy assessment that was done in 2018. That was analyzing aerial imagery from 2017. And then there's been a lot of talk about the update that's coming. So progress reports and also still more to come. About half of the cities that were in that initial assessment have been completed. We are one of them. We were one of the early ones. The ones in yellow there that I've circled are the ones who have been updated. I realize those are the old numbers next to the green bars. The yellow circles are the cities that have been updated. And all of the cities that have been updated are within kind of a 1-2% change. Kent, when you look at the city overall, is showing, I think we moved from 28 to 29%. But one of the things as we look into that data more and bring it in-house, we're lucky enough to have GIS professionals in Parks and Public Works who will help us bring that in so we can analyze, nerd out about it, as my team is probably sick of hearing me use. I love that phrase. A lot of the detail that'll let us act on and kind of ask questions of this data and think about what it means is when you take that overall canopy data and you slice it up into a more granular, like you're looking at this one is showing canopy change from 17 to 23 is sliced by census group. You can do blocks, you can do watersheds. There's a lot of different ways you can slice that data up and look at the analysis. And then there are also, as I'll get into, other levels of data that we track about tree canopy. And there's also some other sources that are citywide canopy data using different protocols from different entities. Don't want to go too far down the data rabbit hole today, but just like there's a lot. It's really cool, a lot of regional effort, and we're paying a lot of attention, and we're looking at getting these data sources in-house and ingested. So now, officially putting my parks hat back on, we have a lot of parks. We're lucky to have some really cool forested acreage, both standalone parks trees. When we talk about urban forestry, we mean the entire 1,200 plus acres that Parks manages. Whereas, about 800 of those acres are what we would call more of a natural area. And the big thing that gives us some grief, although it's cool because it means we're right up next to people, is the length of edge that we manage. So if you think about a forested stand right next to a house or a ball field, there's a lot of yay and a lot of okay if the trees are posing a risk to those other land uses. That's some extra management that's needed. Again, this is a very dense map. You'll be seeing a lot more of this. I believe this is coming out in some of our updated kind of like what does our system look like documents. There's a lot of different metrics there on the side. If anybody does want to know more about them, come ask us later. Really what it amounts to is we manage a lot of different kinds of trees. So when we're talking about parks trees, as Matt was saying, you've got the large forested stands. That's actually the canyon. I love to point out, like there are some really nice chunks in the canyon. We have newly planted trees at places like Saltaire. We've got trees that, like to have disagreements with infrastructure like sidewalks, although Public Works can speak to that way, way more. And then we have the hybrid, right? That's the entrance to Clark Lake, where you've got big trees that we kind of call more of a standalone tree, where we're managing more of like a lawn type area around them. There's also a lot of different strategic plans in parks that touch on trees. Again, really cool. Trees impact a lot of different core function workflows, and also a much more complex conversation than today's topic, where parks is this is kind of we'll be back with more information. Yeah.
Can you go back 2 slides, please? or the one that was the parks managed
If I
acreage?
figure out the buttons. This one?
One back. That one.
Yeah.
The numbers that are next to parks, are those just the numbers of parks? There's like small numbers on them. There's
on the map?
1 and 10 and 42.
To be totally honest, this is a really cool base map that our Parks GIS analyst is in the process of making for the updated, I think, the facility guide. And so I think those numbers are probably tied towards the park name. Like I can see a little dot that is where campus is. So I think that's probably our list of parks properties. But those little teeny tiny numbers on the map, I grabbed this as the base map to say we are all over the city. Look at the variety of the size of those green dots. We have parks that range from 1/10 of an acre to 150 acres. If there is something you're seeing on this map that we want to, zoom into and know more about, I can absolutely capture that today. But for now, this image was meant to be
Oh, no worries.
there's a lot.
Thank you.
But yeah, I believe that those numbers are, that's this park.
Got it. Thank you.
Lots of trees touch on a lot of things. We're going to talk a lot about in the future and on, ingesting this canopy level data. Just want to make sure everybody also knows we track things to the more localized forested stand within our parks, and in some cases we track standalone trees. Really, the takeaway there is lots of different levels of data, granularity of data, and you have to think about what you want a data set to do, what questions you want to ask it, and then, that will it'll be part of what guides what metrics we're tracking at each one of these scales. Again, more to come. So we've got all our standalone tree data in TreeKeeper, and we just completed more of a forested stand ecological monitoring scope. This for today is just awareness that we do have more of that kind of granular forested stand data about parks trees coming. Again, as Matt mentioned, I think Public Works will hit on this too. Managing trees, maintaining trees, growing a forest does involve removing trees. Sometimes that's a risk management situation. There's a whole assessment protocol if we have a tree of concern, particularly that's the maple adjacent to the playground at Saltaire that was quite literally falling apart because of a root disease that our arborist could speak to way better if we were in that level of nerdiness. But this is really supposed to capture, we are also out there doing pretty high profile tree removal sometimes. And so we're navigating that with the public as well. We have some numbers here on the right about the number of hours we spent for staff time and then the dollar amounts we spent doing tree assessments and removals. So the top is staff hours. Big takeaways there are it seems like a lot of hours. And also when you realize that it's spread out across 45 different people in our maintenance staff, we have our parks arborist, our urban forester, Jillian, and then everybody else is kind of varying levels of involved in trees. We don't have 45 tree experts running around. That'd be amazing. We don't have a dedicated tree team. And then the big takeaway for the contracted costs, that was the one-time bucket of money that y'all might have remembered. Thank you, we appreciate it. Also, we did spend it all, so you'll be hearing, I'm sure, from us more on what risk management and mitigation looks like around there. And then the workload is hard to capture when it comes to these removals because they really are a case-by-case situation. We get a lot of concerns from the public. They don't all turn into a removal, but they are something to manage. People have big feelings about trees, both the loving them and the being concerned about what they'll do. But we do try to plant things too. So Kent has been a Tree City USA for 23 years. That pulls in numbers from Parks and Public Works and relies on us having some tree code. We do an Arbor Day proclamation and planting every year. We have Green Kent events scattered around the city, some of which involve planting, some don't. Sometimes we get the chance to involve the community in that replanting process, and sometimes it's our crews out there running around with planting bags and shovels back in the woods and nobody will see them, but we are out there doing it when we can. It tends to be opportunistic. It tends to be reliant on either grant funds or partner support, and there are some Some signs that some of that regional, everybody's struggling to dedicate money towards these things. And so if we are relying on grant funding, that's operational time to ask for it and can't count on those pots of money being there. There are also challenges beyond our control. So we don't exactly know what they are, but we know they're coming on a day-to-day basis, and then more, with best science, best available science looking forward. So some of it's our community members who clearly, I like to think, don't understand and do vandalism to some of our trees. That's one of the pictures. There's also emerging pests and pathogens and some potentially climate change associated species dieback. So the green circle is a western red cedar that's showing dieback regionally for, we don't even know all the reasons. So we know things beyond our control are coming, and there's ways that we can manage our forests and our trees to be more resilient, but there's still going to be curveballs. I've been very lucky and thankful to formalize working with the other departments. We were doing it already a little bit, but having the work group really helps things just within the last 6 months, the critical areas ordinance update and how that relates to forested stands that are in critical areas. The MPDS permit is going to touch on all city-owned and operated property, as they'll touch on, and then just nerding out with the other, like the best practices, the maintenance crews, the how are you doing it, how are you handling this? Like I think the internal arborist collaboration, which, the nerding out means a lot. So I will hand it off to my fellow eco nerd. Sorry I rambled too much, like always.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Harrell. I work in street vegetation in the Public Works Operations Department, and I'm going to talk to you about what we do in Public Works Operations as far as urban trees. Public Works Operations has several different crews involved in managing trees and contributing to the city's tree canopy. Each area has different goals and environmental factors to consider when making decisions about managing trees. The Street Tree Program manages approximately 2,500 trees. Street trees provide a lot of unique benefits, including adding aesthetic appeal to the community, cooling urban areas, calming traffic, and extending the life of pavement. Tasks such as pruning, cutting tree grates as trunks grow, and watering new trees need to be done regularly. Tree planting is a very important aspect of the Street Tree Program, but maintenance after planting is the largest investment of time. Our street tree work is performed by the same crew that maintains traffic islands and other right-of-way areas. Sidearm mower operators also help with tree maintenance in the winter when they're not mowing. And occasionally we utilize contractors for large projects. The street tree life cycle. Like some of the other people were saying, street trees in urban areas have a limited life expectancy. Life is tough in a tree pit, as you can see in that picture. They have limited growing space above ground and below. Access to water and nutrients is difficult in these small spaces, causing stress and increasing the chances of pests and diseases. We do take measures to extend the life of our trees, but eventually even a healthy street tree will outgrow its space and need to be removed and replaced. A couple of goals this year for our street tree program is to update our street tree inventory and our approved street tree list. We also have environmental restoration sites. The wetland mitigation crew manages 96 acres in various stages of restoration. The crew is made up of 1 full-time employee and 5 limited-hour temporary staff. This crew plants thousands of native trees, shrubs, wildflowers, and grasses each year. Many of the plants are grown at the city's native plant nursery that this crew manages. Tree maintenance on these sites consists of watering new plants and controlling competing vegetation. Our wetland maintenance program. The wetland maintenance crew consists of 1 full-time employee and 1 limited-hour temporary. They maintain 174 sites around the city. That's a total of 877 acres. Most of the wetlands are in neighborhoods in close proximity to homes. Tree health and hazard abatement are priorities in these areas. Funding for the wetland maintenance program comes from the Drainage Fund. Oh, and if I could go back. Funding for environmental restoration sites come from the Drainage Fund and individual project funds. We get a lot of grant funding for these sites. Wellhead protection and spring sites. The water vegetation crew is made up of 2 full-time employees and 1 seasonal temporary. They manage the trees and other vegetation on all water facility sites, including 488 acres of wellhead and spring sites. These are large areas with heavy tree cover that contribute a lot to the city's total tree canopy cover. Funding for maintenance at the wellhead and spring sites come from the Water Fund. Are there any questions?
Laura.
Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you for this presentation. Where does the street tree funding come from?
That comes from the Street Fund.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like Laura is up. Thank you, Jennifer.
Hello, my name is Laura Heron. I'm the Environmental Water Quality Supervisor. And today I'm here to talk to you about the NPDES permit, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. The city is required to obtain this permit in order to discharge water from our public system into waters of the state. And this is part of the Clean Water Act. That is a requirement of the Environmental Protective Agency. And in the state of Washington, the Department of Ecology oversees this permit. This requires the development of implementation of pollution prevention programs and policies. We are currently under the permit that is started in 2024, and it will go until 2029. Along with this permit came many new programs and policies that we are required to implement, and the tree canopy program is one of these permits. So this has become one of the big drivers that started the urban forestry group so that we could all get together and see how we could work together to meet these permit requirements. So the mandate is to implement green infrastructure as policy. Under NPDES, trees are formally now recognized as stormwater management assets, and the intent is to integrate this tree canopy policies into our stormwater planning. So by the deadline of December 31st, 2026, we will need to map the tree canopy on permittee-owned and operated properties, and that's what this really covers under the permit, is the permittee-owned and operated properties. And we will need to identify tree canopy areas for stormwater management, and we are currently working on doing this. We're looking at Planet Geo and seeing if this might work for us. We're going to be meeting with RGIS staff to see if this will really meet the requirements of the permit. There's a lot of good data out there, but we want to be very accurate and strategic about how we define our tree canopy, because this has the potential to become a legal asset that is protected under our stormwater system. So we want to make sure we're doing it correctly. And as you've learned throughout this presentation, trees benefit our community in many, many different ways. So we want to be strategic in how we make sure that we're also considering the needs of our overburdened communities and how trees are important to them as well, and how we can make sure that we're meeting their needs while implementing these plans and policies. So by December 31st, 2028, we will map the overburdened communities in relation to the canopy on permittee-owned and operated properties. And then we'll establish goals to maintain or increase the tree canopy in overburdened communities.
Laura, I have a question.
Sure.
So when you're talking about mapping trees for both the map tree canopy and for the overburdened communities, permittee owned, so are we going specifically just for the permits, or is it going to be?
It's for city-owned and maintained property, so any properties that the city owns and maintains.
Okay. So it's not going to be a requirement for?
No, this just covers our requirements as a city.
Okay, thank you.
So our plan is, by December 31st, 2028, we will adopt and implement a tree canopy goals and policies. And that includes establishing long-term goals to maintain existing mature canopy and increasing as feasible. And we will create code, policy updates, and other enforceable documents to document and support these policies. Any questions?
Thank you for having me here today to talk about this. I am, in fact, Nate Schildmeyer, Economic and Community Development. The role that ECD plays in maintaining tree canopy throughout the city is fundamentally pretty different than what you've just heard about from Parks and Public Works. As they each described, those two departments are actively out there planting, cutting, maintaining spaces that are owned and operated by the city. And they each did an excellent job going through all of those types of things, even overviewing it. It's a lot, that they're up to out there. But the role that ECD plays and the way that we contribute is different. At a really basic level, what we primarily do is review development plans and proposals in the form of permit applications. So in that way, the nature of our work is more reactive to just kind of what comes in the door for development. And the work itself is regulatory. So we implement requirements for tree preservation and providing trees as private developments get approved and built, consistent with the adopted development codes and the regulations and the laws that apply to those. The regulations related to trees that we deal with touch on a few key areas relative to trees and tree canopy, and that dictate how trees end up on private sites after the development occurs. So there are really about three categories or buckets of regulations that these laws fall into. So I want to mention the first two of those somewhat briefly, and then spend a little more time tonight at the end talking about the third bucket, which is the residential tree regulations that we have. So here on the screen, you can see Kent's critical areas. I'm pretty familiar with that. That update has been going on for a year and a half, long time. So on this slide, you see the representation of the known and mapped areas of the city where there are already those strict regulatory restrictions on almost any and all tree removals based on environmental sensitivity. These are the city's critical areas and shorelines combined all on one, and together they constitute roughly about a third of the city's total land area. And I realize this is kind of a hard image to make sense of at this scale, on a citywide scale. It's just really meant to give you a taste of the amount of area that we're talking about, which is roughly about a third of the city's land area. So from a regulatory perspective, these are essentially no-cut areas for existing trees based on being designated in some way, shape, or form as the area being designated as environmentally sensitive. So unless a property owner might have something like a single hazardous tree or something that they need to address, they're not really allowed under the regulations to go and clear cut or cut down trees or disturb vegetation significantly in these areas. So the second category of regulatory requirements that we deal with that I really just briefly want to call your attention to is our general landscaping requirements. So these are requirements that are generally applicable to bigger ticket developments like commercial development, industrial, large multifamily sites, and just anything that's a site that's developed on kind of on a larger scale. Well, there's absolutely some really good functional purposes to these regulations, like for shading buildings and stormwater management and low-impact development, and to provide buffers between properties to shield noise and light from the neighbors. These regulations are also for aesthetic purposes. The trees being planted on these sites and arranged as they are, as you can kind of see here in these pictures, allows them to coexist with whatever the site is actually being developed for. Excuse me. And by requiring that developers build some landscaping elements into their parking lots and around the buildings and around the edges of the site, like you kind of see here represented, in a way that balances the site's primary purpose with plantings that make the site attractive and user-friendly, it just makes our city's places nicer to live in and to visit and to work in. So the third of our category of our regulations that ECD really deals with, heavily, the one I want to spend a little extra time here with tonight is the set of regulations that apply to how residential developments do trees in residential areas and in our neighborhoods. So these are the regulations that are primarily responsible for how neighborhoods are either required to retain existing mature trees and or choose to plant new replacement trees closest in proximity to where people live and where that tree canopy can provide the greatest benefit to people in the community. The reason I'd like to spend a little extra time on this topic tonight is that with middle housing and our implementation measures through Recode Kent that are still going on, and you guys are well aware of, traditional residential development patterns are changing and getting denser, and so our residential tree regulations will need to adapt to respond to these changes. The way that green spaces and trees function in these residential areas shapes in a pretty fundamental way how people perceive the place they live and their neighborhood that they live in. So relative to the residential tree code regulations, you can see it on the bottom half of this slide. In 2024, King County did a pretty in-depth assessment of tree codes on a city-by-city basis throughout the county. And you can see here the general grouping that we fell into, the level 3 moderate, which their formula was essentially 4 tiers. It was like no regulations, good, better, best. And we kind of came into that better category in that. So what we did when we got the results of that report and we saw it and went through it is that we went out and sought out other jurisdictions that were rated like us and at a higher level, at tier 4 under their rating system, and used that input as a basis to start thinking about what we could potentially be doing better with our regulations. So those ratings were based on our current regulations, and this slide here is just meant to give you kind of a taste of like what that looks like without going through all the nuts and bolts of it. So our current code, as you can see described here, is what that assessment that was done in the ratings that were provided by the county. So under the current code, planning staff typically does a review of a tree credit analysis for a plat during the preliminary review process, and based on what the applicant proposes to either retain or plant, they have to meet the required standard that we have of 20 tree credits per acre. So tree credits are assigned for any retained existing trees by size. You can kind of see that in the demonstration there. And all qualifying newly planted trees essentially count as 1 credit. So by the math, if a site is fully cleared to make way for a new subdivision, what the developer is doing is planting trees throughout the neighborhood at a ratio of 20 new trees planted per acre. On any undeveloped lots where there's an existing house located, the property owner can, under today's rules, remove any of their trees unless the trees are part of an already approved tree plan for a plat or a short plat. And on any undeveloped lot with no house or established use or anything built on it, they're prohibited from removing any of the significant trees. And as it shows on the slide here at the bottom, and just as a kind of a general reminder, anything within a wetland or on a steep slope or anything that's on a property that's under development that's in a critical area is also subject to those environmental restrictions that I mentioned in the first category. Yeah, sure.
Talk about the tree credit system applies only to traditional subdivisions.
Mm-hmm.
What would be a non-traditional?
So I'm kind of just saying traditional in the sense pre-middle housing, like not unit lot subdivisions are coming in, those types of things. So it's just kind of the way neighborhood development has been happening for a long time. So yeah, there's no real definitive definition of traditional versus non-traditional. It's just kind of development patterns in the past. So sure. Yeah, so this slide here gives a basic idea. Oh, I'm sorry, forgot to switch my talking points. So over the last 2 years, since that report came out, Lindsay Walker on my staff and I have conducted well over 20 interviews with other cities and jurisdictions to gather information and feedback, and to dive into not just the language of their codes that each of these cities has on the books, which is what that rating that the county assigned was based on, but to also dig into what's working, what's not working about the way their codes are written. So we can kind of really get a view behind the scenes of like, how do they work, not just what the language says. So we asked a bunch of questions. We spent time with all of these jurisdictions and a lot of others. And we just asked them, like, what's working or not working about the way things are written? What kind of review processes and administrative resources does your tree code require? Do people in the city or town like these regulations and feel good about them? Or is it something that they're always upset about and you're always having a fight with them What we were able to do through that effort was gather some really great feedback through the interviews and a few common themes and issues that they kind of all faced and dealt with in different ways emerged. So for the purposes of generalizing those the themes and issues, they basically boil down to those 4 items that are on the bottom of the slide. So the first of those is how we strike the right balance relative to like a natural tension that exists between a strategy that mandates or incentivizes retention of existing trees versus mandating or incentivizing replanting requirements. So how a jurisdiction decides to strike that balance is really critical. This is something that, from everything we heard from other places, takes some really careful, careful and intentional strategizing in order to balance the priorities for things like infill development, increased density that allows for greater home ownership opportunities, and middle housing generally. The second of those is how we choose to qualify and regulate hazardous trees and conditions. A tree that's damaged in a storm, great example being the bomb cyclone event that happened about a year or 2 ago, where overnight, we've got thousands of new hazardous trees around the city that have to be dealt with. And so when that tree is threatening to fall on someone's house, it might not allow time for lengthy approval processes to take place or for the person to hire an arborist to write an assessment that they can show to us, and then we can green light them to do something. So how do we balance tree protection with protection for people's homes and properties? That's another big one. Third is the administrative processes and costs. And this is a really important consideration from both the perspective of the city, but also for the individual property owners. What are we requiring of them? How much of the city's limited, as you're all very well aware, resources, are we willing to commit in terms of staff time and for permit processing and reviews and for enforcement activities? All of those cost time and money for the city. And how much of a property owner's limited resources are we asking for them to commit to tree protection, maintenance, and replacement? Are we creating a process and a cost burden that incentivizes compliance with the requirements, or are we creating a process and a cost burden for both the city and for the property owner that incentivizes non-compliance? And the last of the overarching themes, the clearly stated goals, are a real key. So if we can articulate clearly what we want to achieve with the code and the regulations, the way that we kind of restructure things, and say what we want to have happen as we consider revisions, then we'll be able to measure our progress towards whatever our goals are. So in that spirit, we've come up with a few broad stroke type things to consider as we look at making some changes to our existing residential tree codes. On the screen here, you can see 5 bullets where staff have taken all that input that we've heard and identified a few key things that I think we need to consider as we kind of approach some changes. The first is that we make some text revisions to our code the way it's written right now, and the stated intent in the tree preservation code section. That section's especially helpful when having to make interpretations and in the administration of the code generally. And then also adding a new code section within the residential tree code regulations that focuses on enforcement provisions. That would be an opportunity to establish really some kind of nuanced and right-sized procedures to deal specifically with trees that are separate and distinct from our general code enforcement regulations that are in a different chapter. So another one of these bullets up here is that in terms of how our code requirements apply to middle housing, how we might modify the existing credit formula that's the basis of our current regulation. The main objective for change here would be to make tree requirements more compatible with and applicable to the variety of middle housing options that are now out there and available to people when they're doing development. We'd like to think about some practical and productive ways that we could change and tweak and apply our credit formula differently in order to get more of the trees and tree canopy that we want as a result. And so really the basic question, you can see it represented in the graphic here, is how do we fit more stuff in the form of housing units, utilities, parking areas, stuff like that, like you can see in these demonstration site plans on the right, onto smaller and smaller sites, and how we right-size the requirements for tree regulations to fit into the, to fit either retained or newly planted trees into those types of scenarios. And how do we adjust the math behind how our credits are calculated in an appropriate way that supports our tree goals that we have? And the final point I'd like to make here is that we have to be also really realistic and intentional in terms of both the time and money we want to invest in our tree codes. If we're going to dial up the staff's workload with new administration and enforcement, our own costs are going to increase. And if we're going to dial up the costs on the applicant side to have them pay for things like arborists and or costly permit review application fees, how much are we expecting a homeowner or developer to realistically pay? Costs and timing are just elements that we just need to have a balance for and a clear idea of what's entailed for these. So on the screen here, these are a couple just key takeaways that I'd like to leave you with related to how our residential tree codes might be ripe for some updates. Residential development patterns are changing with the variety of changes brought on by middle housing and our implementation measures that we're going through with Recode Kent. And our tree codes just really need to update and change and adapt alongside in order to effectively respond. So the next steps for Lindsay on my staff and I is that what we'd like to do, if we have the consent of the council to do it, is to come back in about 3 months. We're targeting like June, to really bring some proposals relative to the language of the code section that deals with tree preservation for residential development, and start having some conversations, with you guys in order to try to figure out what direction we want to go and how much, we're willing to dial things up or, adjust things, change the math on our formula, those types of things. And in the meantime, we're also going to continue having some conversations with other jurisdictions where we've heard some things that we're interested in, think might work well for us, and be able to bring all that information to you. Like I said, our target is in approximately June to come in and start having some more of that conversation, detail focus on this section. So that's it for the presentation, and I think we're all here. If you have any other questions for anyone else or for myself, happy to
Thank you,
answer.
Nate.
Yeah.
Thank you, Margaret, Jennifer, Laura, and Matt, for this presentation. I have a couple of questions, and I think Councilmember Boyce does as well. So my first one is about the group. How often are you all planning on meeting, or what do you think the goal will be or outcome?
Well, I would say we're meeting as needed. Our focus since August has been on putting this presentation together to kind of give you this overview. And I think as we move into first the development regulations update, we'll make sure that as we prepare recommendations for the council, that we'll have those internally vetted to see if there are any conflicts and if they could be, if they're as good as they can be. So it's kind of it's an ad hoc or as needed group. So
I think it's a great group, getting everyone together. Okay, Councilmember Boyce, followed by Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Madam President. Great presentation. People, there's a lot of things that make a city go, but who would think about urban forestry management as part of what make the city, a city, right? So I know we got 3 gentlemen who didn't get to speak, so maybe just give them a time. They're part of the team, I'm assuming, right? So give them a chance maybe to stand up and introduce yourself if you don't mind, please.
And
Start with
Jillian.
you with the hat on.
And Jillian, too.
Come on up and
come up, please. Yeah, you guys part of the team. You deserve your due.
Good evening. My name is Bryce Morellis. I am the street vegetation lead for Public Works Operations. One of my jobs is to help manage the street tree program, as well as remove hazard trees throughout the city, direct my crew to do prunings and plantings throughout the city, amongst managing irrigation systems, managing landscape contracts, managing the general maintenance of planted beds throughout the city, and managing my crew as a whole, as people.
Thanks for all you do. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Schroeder. Been with the city a long time. Been doing this a long time. I'm really proud of these guys for doing this presentation. This is something that's been a long time coming. I know a big part of our job, and we were the ones that were involved with the bomb cyclone. We did a lot of tree work. I'm the supervisor for street vegetation. When we went through that particular event, we were dealing with trees. I was dealing with trees on the phone with police and everyone else involved. I literally got a phone call, and I looked back at my call log. Every 30 seconds to 2 minutes, I got a phone call about a tree down. So we had crews out filling that. It was pretty intense. Like I said, it was one of those things where, being that I've been here since 85 and a half, seeing the city grow from this big to this big, and with that happening and development happening and everything else, and the city growing, it's really cool to see there be the opportunity to get a group together like this to where you can actually bring things up to, especially with dealing with city code and stuff like that, update those codes and bring those to where they're very efficient for what we do. I know myself, Jennifer, and Bryce, we spend a lot of time in the field talking to citizens, and it's good when we have that city code and city backing from council and everything else, that when we go out there, we're giving, correct information to the public. And it's time to update that and change some of those things, because as the city changes, we need to change with it to be able to address those issues for our community. So, but no, thank you guys for what you do.
Hey, I just remember you came to my house, right?
Did.
The tree behind mine. I just remember that. So thank you very much as well. Okay.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Good evening. My name is Logan Wilkinson. I'm a maintenance worker too under Scott with Bryce and Jen also. And so I've only been with the city for 2.5 years. I was actually watching videos on YouTube of tree climbers and arborists. Mm-hmm. And I talked to a buddy. He said, hey, apply at the city. He works here at Kent also. And then all 3 of them are arborists. So I've just always thought that stuff was awesome. And I've got to help with quite a bit of tree jobs and planting and pruning jobs. We got to do a bucket truck job today. Do some pruning with trees. It's just fun stuff. I love doing it, and I'm just happy to be here. And I heard they were coming out here tonight, and I just wanted to see what it was about, come support, and be here.
So the best decision you ever made is come work for the city of Kent.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more.
I'm Jillian Lawrence. I am the Parks Urban Forester. I work a lot with Margaret, taking care of our parks trees, handling trees of concern, citizen concerns. And lately we've been able to get out there and plant a whole bunch of seedlings from the DNR. Happy to see those grow up, and really excited to be working with this urban forestry group across the city. Done some chatting back and forth between different departments, and it's nice to have everyone in the same room and able to nerd out about tree things.
So thank you. So Matt will not be a good leader without people like you guys. So thank you very much for all you do. How about a nice hand for them?
Yeah. I thought they didn't want to say anything, but can I just as privileged, just point out, I want to recognize that group and say to Chad Barron and Julie Periscindola, who are in the room tonight, the directors of those 2 departments, thank you for allowing these folks to be part of the group. They've been extremely professional, very knowledgeable, and have just worked really hard to bring this together. So thank you for the time tonight, and thank you to the group.
Thank you, guys.
Councilor Michelle.
President, I just want to say thank you to all the staff as well. I know you've spent a lot of time on this for years, and we've had some conversations lately, a lot more about them, so I appreciate your time. I do think that the development regulations are a good place to start, so I'm looking forward to that presentation later this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Malarmer.
Mic's on. Yeah, I want to also just thank you guys and tell you I'm a little bit jealous. Being able to nerd out on trees frequently is awesome. So I really appreciate your guys' enthusiasm and all you're doing for our beautiful giants throughout the community. So it means a lot to me personally, just to take care of what we have in our urban forest. So thank you very much.
Any other comments? All right. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much, team, for this
I
presentation.
want to shout out though
Yes.
for Lindsay Walker, who's not here tonight. She's also a very instrumental part of helping me prepare for this, helping me with these interviews that we conducted like over the course of years, setting those up. She just had other stuff she had to attend to tonight, so so I had to do the speaking. Otherwise, I'd let her, do that. But you guys have seen her with the critical areas ordinance.
Absolutely, we have.
She's fabulous.
All right. Thank you so much, and looking forward to future presentations. And shout out to Lindsay Walker. We'll see her next time. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Nice one.